Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the finale of the Wines of British Columbia's virtual education and tasting series. My name is Ashley Spilak with the BC Wine Institute. Our knowledgeable host today is coming to us from Kelowna in the heart of BC wine country, and educator, wine lover, judge, writer, grape grower, and farmer Rhys Pender, Master of Wine. Rhys has worked in the wine industry since he was a teenager. In 2010, he became Canada's youngest Master of Wine, has his professional culinary diploma, and all levels of WSET. Presently, Rhys runs his own WSET wine school consulting business called Wine Plus, and has a 4-acre winery in the Milkmain Valley called Little Farm Winery. Rhys has written for a number of publications, Wine Alliance, Maclean's, Monte Cristo, Sip, Taste, to name a few, and he's often a judge at international wine competitions, including Decanter, Texon, Wine Alliance, and the BC Wine Awards in Canada. We're obviously thrilled to have Rhys with us today, leading an extremely interesting webinar on the topic of ageability. Our event today will take 45 minutes. It will include a 15-minute Q&A chat session after the tasting. Please share your questions during any time of the webinar, and we will do our best to answer all questions at the end. Technical tasting notes are located on the right-hand side for your download. Please follow along. Beyond a visit to BC wine country, for our BC and Alberta viewers today looking to find these wines in stores, we will be posting links with this information in the chat on the right side of your screen. Now I'll hand it over to Rhys, who will introduce our impressive guests today and lead us through this exciting tasting.
Awesome, thanks Ashley. Hi everyone. Cheers, I hope everyone's comfortable, got some wine. Today we're joined by Darryl Brooker from Mission Hill Family Estate. Hi, Darryl, and Andy Gebert from St. Hubertus. And we're going to jump straight in. What we're going to talk about is one of my favorite topics, which is the ageability of BC wine. So we're going to try and do about a 30-minute chat. We've got 4 wines that we're going to taste. As Ashley said, you can download the text sheets on the right-hand side. And then we're going to have time for about 15 minutes worth of questions at the end, so you can, anything that comes up, you can enter it on the side, and we'll go through it. So I'm going to start with a little background on ageability of wine. So what do you need for a wine to age? Well, you need flavor intensity. You need something to age, right? And then you need something to help preserve that over time. And what that is usually acid or tannin are the main things, right? So how do you get that, right? So if you look at the BC climate, we're really lucky, and now we have the perfect climate for making ageable wines. Why we're not known for them is more because of being a young industry and the way we've been selling wine, but got all the right things. So we get these great hot sunny days here. What that does is build tons of flavor intensity in the wine. Then we get these really, really cool nights in the growing season. It drops back often below 10 degrees Celsius. That creates this natural acidity. Hot sunny days too, and they're being very long, as we're so far north, builds more tannins in the skins of the red grapes, and so we get great tannin, great acidity, great flavor concentration. So why wouldn't they age, right? And it just turns up that they do, provided you, of course, cellar them properly at a decent, cool, constant temperature. These are wines that can age for a very, very long time, and I think it's kind of a story where we're not maybe telling yet as well as we could. So we're starting telling that story today. So Andy, I'll start with you. You've been at it for a long time here in the Okanagan. What's your experience with aging wines, aging BC wines?
Well, it seems to be that the wines age better than I do. But it's definitely a journey that we started. On the beginning, winemaking was more like a vanity pay, a simple start of making a living for many of the wineries. And the idea of aging was probably not at the forefront of most of us. So most of the wines we needed to produce so that consumers could enjoy right away. And so the idea of aging wines came a little bit later on, because it is a luxury for wineries to produce wines that stay away for a number of years before they are being released. And so Riesling, obviously, and with their absolutely crystal sharp acidity, was a natural to use for that. And it showed absolutely amazing, these wines. But having said that, there's also some other wines that were early on produced, like we had a 30-plus-year-old Ehrenfelser from Geringer, which was absolutely delightful, beyond expectation. So if people are passionate about wine, definitely worthwhile putting some of these great wines away.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I just had one of your 2007 Oak Bay Pinot Noirs about a month or two ago, and it was drinking amazingly well. And I thought that was it's kind of, you don't expect it. I remember quite a while ago now, I had found I had a lot of older BC wine in my cellar, so I decided to put on a couple of tastings of all 10-plus-year-old wines, and no one had really talked about this at the time, and so I just thought, we'll give it a try, see what happens. No expectations. And then, so many of the wines were great, like really, really good, and with excellent potential. And so, I think it's just something where we're just starting to in the groove of being able to talk about stuff as part of that next phase. So Darryl, what's your take on ageability of BC wine since you've been here?
Yeah, impressed with age, how well the wines age, actually. And, Rhys, one of the first tastings I came to when I moved to BC in 2010 was one that you used to put on at the Penticton Wine Information Centre there. And I think for licensing reasons, it must have been illegal. You got shut down. But they were great tastings. And it was my first exposure, actually, to some older reds that you used to pour that. And so I was really impressed. And then, obviously, with Mission Hill, we've got a lot of back vintages. So being able to try some of the bigger reds, going back, we did a vertical not so long ago of 2005 to 2015, and the 5s, the 6s, the 7s were still amazingly fresh and bright wines, and had a long life ahead of them. They were far past it. So yeah, I think it crosses over. Riesling is a no-brainer, but we definitely see it in the reds and how well they age as well.
Yeah, no, that's been my take as well, and it kind of blows your mind. And I think we're being a young industry and a lot of newer businesses. You kind of have to sell your wine quickly, right, for cash flow reasons. You encourage people to buy it and drink it, and even when you looked at what people used to put on their back label, it was very conservative. They all drink this in 3 to 5 years, and these are wines 10 years later that are still drinking beautifully. So I think that's changing. People have a bit more confidence now too, in because now we can actually look back a little bit and see, how some of these wines are developing. So, I don't think all BC wines age well or are designed to age, but there's certainly some. I picked 4 different varieties or styles of wine here that I think age really well: Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and then a Bordeaux blend, but a Bordeaux blend with a twist. We'll get to that in a second, not just Bordeaux blend. And, there's other wines I think we make in BC that are just really designed to, drink it young and fresh, and like the rosés, the Pinot Gris, the Sauvignon Blancs. To me, they seem to be just, get into them in the first 2 or 3 years and they're perfect like that. So that's great. But a lot of others, they really, 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 just get so much better once they hit that 4 or 5, year mark, right? And I feel like, in a way, customers are sometimes missing out on the best of these wines because they've already drunk them when they were 1 or 2 years old. So I think it's a story we need to tell. Let's go into the first wine that we've got, Andy. So we've got your Oak Bay Reserve Riesling 2014 here. Don't know if you can see that. You can download the tech info on the side to get the details. So with 2014 is the current release, and I think this is, tells a great story about Riesling. So, Riesling's a known ageable wine in, across the world. Here we get a bit of mixed style. There's some sweeter, some drier. I feel like a lot more people are going to this drier style like you've done here. So tell us a little bit about this wine and your experience with aging Riesling. This is from some old vines too, right? So
it is. Riesling is one of these grape varieties which, in the industry, there is a love affair with them. For the consumers, it is a mixed bag of not really finding the proper spot. And there's a vast variety of different Rieslings produced, like you mentioned, from very sweet to like absolutely austere, beautiful renderings. So for us, we're very fortunate to have some of the original Becker project plantings that were the forefathers of basically modern viticulture. And we're very fortunate that we left them in the ground and did not replace them by, for example, for a sexy variety like a Pinot Gris. And now we're getting rewarded with. Sorry?
Oh, I said thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, and so we're now rewarded with some beautiful old fruit, old for North American or Canadian standards. We make sure that it has lots of acidity at harvest, and it is for the first 2 to 3 years. It is a very unfriendly wine. It is super tight. It is after if you do a tasting after 2 glasses, you will speak German. It is quite intense. Putting it aside, though, it will start to get into its own world, and it tastes beautifully then. So,
yeah, for me, it's really getting those beautiful, like, because I find, with young Riesling from here in the drier style, it's very lean in those first couple of years. Then it kind of fleshes out, right? It gets a texture. I mean, Darryl, you know this too from in Australia, right? The same thing happens. You get this sort of waxy, beautiful texture start to develop that really balances that high acid beautifully. And yeah, really, I think this wine is drinking so well now, but got a massive future. What's the oldest Riesling of yours that you've had, Andy?
For us, like we have some out of the 92, we have some of our own private stock that we kept on producing, and so we have a handful of them, and they drink. Some of the vintages are absolutely light; they're pure gold. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think this has got a great life ahead of it, and sometimes I think people they'll see an older white wine on the shelf. And, there's a little bit of a tendency for people to go, oh, there's something wrong with this wine. It didn't sell. It's like, when it should be, grab that stuff. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. They've, been able to hold on to that and have it released when it's ready to drink. And so, I don't know, do you find that's an issue with people? They look at it in 2014 Riesling and they're like, hang on a sec, what's wrong with it? And
one of the big challenges, obviously, with aging wines is like if people buy wines, they have to be conscious of what they want to do with it. Putting it obviously on the kitchen cabinet or on the windowsill will obviously destroy anything. And it also goes to the simple point of getting familiar with that wine and having, when you go to the wineries, sample the wine and see the potential for aging. And maybe after 2 years or so, revisit that lot of wine and trying again, and then make an evaluation if you want to keep on holding it back, or if you want to have it for dinner soon. So, like the maintenance of a wine collection is equally as important than just buying it. You have to actually work it. So.
Yeah. I like to say kind of, buy a case, try a bottle every year, and when it's hit the perfect thing, have the bottle every night till it's gone. Right?
Absolutely. So it's hard work.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, let's go on to the second wine we have. So we're going to switch over to Darryl here. We have the Mission Hills Perpetua. This is 2018, so this is a kind of a pre-release sample that we've got, right, Darryl? I think it's going to be released July 1st. So one of the top shards in the Mission Hill portfolio there. So now for me, Chardonnay is not always known as a wine that can age, and there's many regions in the world where by the 5 or so years, the Chardonnay is really on the decline, but we've had some really great, I had a few 13-year-old BC Chardonnays recently too from '07, and it was like, again, still so much life to them. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with Chardonnay here and ageability? Obviously, this one's still young, but what's its potential?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I'm the same as you. It's I always have a mixed feeling on Chardonnay, and Andy hit the nail on the head in that you have to, if you can go to the winery and try the Chardonnay or taste it some other way, even better to see how it's structured, the acidity, the freshness, the overall style. Because I think Chardonnay sits in two camps, and there's nothing wrong with either camp. But like some Chardonnays are made where they can age and they can really, really improve with age, and other Chardonnays are made to enjoy younger. They're a little softer, they're a little fresher. A little softer, a little rounder, and ready to enjoy straight away. So what got me excited, I think, about Perpetua is I recently, and I'm talking less than 6 months ago, opened up a 2010, and the wine was. It was. I don't think Chardonnay. I wouldn't claim this Chardonnay would age as well as Andy's Riesling that we're just trying. Actually, I think the Riesling's got a longer life naturally. But in trying the 2010, and I'd compare the 18 vintage with the 10 vintage. It was my first harvest here, and I'd compare them very close. So they were quite long, drawn out seasons, relatively cool, especially in fall. And yeah, so when I tried the 2010 Perpetua, I was so impressed with how bright and fresh it was, but it turned toasty and it had a level of richness I never saw in the wine before. So, I'm definitely hoping that's where the 18 goes.
You're right there, for sure, in the style too, because let's just get it out there. For a lot of people, they still think of Chardonnay as really oaky and over the top, and those styles really didn't age very well, right? But I think you guys would agree that most people in BC, most wineries have really pulled back the percentage of new oak down to like 20-30%. The picking a little bit earlier, fresher. This has such great stone fruit and lemon and good acidity, and and I think it's so everyone just has to learn. Go back and try Chardonnay again if you're sitting outside, not staying away. Don't do that anymore because it's really gotten very, very good. And also, this I think will easily go 10 plus years, right? And think about where else in the world can you find Chardonnay that ages for 10 plus years, and if it does, how much it's going to cost. Sorry, I nearly swore there. But how much it's going to cost, right? So that's the value we have in our wines for wines that can easily age 10 years is pretty incredible. And I know this Perpetua is one of the higher end ones in the Mission Hill portfolio, but in terms of, say, Burgundy and things like that, you're not going to get anything, probably that will last this long for the same price, right? So it's a really good value there in this ageability. And Andy, your Riesling too, same story, such great value for an ageable wine. Right? So we have to tell that story. Yeah.
This one here, just, congratulations to that wine. I think it is an absolute amazing wine. I could see it being for dinner this evening with ceviche and grilled avocado, and it would be absolutely a delight. And I would look forward to especially on this one, like how it's going to show in 6 years. I think it's an absolute gorgeous wine.
Yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, so Darryl, too, you guys, like Mission Hill has some history with Chardonnay and awards and ageability. I'm thinking of the 1992 Grand Reserve one. Do you want to just tell us that story a little bit? And I know I've had that wine at 15 years old at one point, and it was still good. But
Yeah, that's right. It's that was really the big thing for Mission Hill back in the day was the 92 Grand Reserve Chardonnay won the Avery Trophy at the International Wine and Spirits Challenge in London in 1994. So it was still a very, very young wine. It's the best Chardonnay in the world, which at the time was a big deal for Canada. Like Canada's gone on to win many great awards from many wineries and the Okanagan Valley specifically. So that was but that was a big jump and a big leap. And I think that's when people started taking Chardonnay seriously in the Okanagan Valley. It's, the other thing I was going to comment on ageability is you can't deny that the age of vines eventually play a role in ageability. From the reason we just tried very, very old vines, these these Chardonnay vines that are going into Perpetua are now 22, 23 years old as well. So, we're seeing once you get over that 10 and especially 15 and preferably 20, that does play a big role in the ageability of the wines as well, especially the white wines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's drinking so well. And even, as a pre-release, I think, you can, the good thing too, I think with a lot of BC wines is you can drink this now, but it can also age, right? It's not like, it's untouchable. You just go for it now. I've got a paella planned for tonight. Andy, do you think that'll work with that? I've got some fresh spot prawns, and I think it'll be pretty good. So, cool.
It is one of these things with the like a wine is something alive, and obviously people have an idea of what it would. They tried it at one point, and they think it's going to stay the same, and obviously it will evolve. And following a wine to that journey is something that gives so much pleasure. For us, it has a different idea a little bit, because it will also remind us of parts of our life, of what happened in that year. And what better way to do it than actually having like a great, like Chardonnay, like a great start so early on, and many years to go.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go on to the Pinot. I know it feels like we're having to rush through these a bit, but we want to allow time for some of the questions that are coming in. Andy, when we go to the split screen, we're cutting off half of your face. So I don't know if you can look at yourself now and see if you can just move up a bit. Apparently people want to see your beautiful mug there. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. So Pinot is another one that also is not always known for its ageability, right? And in many areas it doesn't, it's not considered to last that long. Of course, there's some very classic wines that have a long life, but again, I've been having quite a bit of 10 to 13-year-old Pinot Noir lately from BC, and yeah, really blown away. I had one in 2009 from Vancouver Island a couple of weeks ago that was great, from Avril Creek, and I had I mentioned earlier, your 07 of this wine. So this is the Oak Bay Pinot Noir, Reserve 2017 vintage. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Pinot?
Pinot for us is one of the wines that, because we're exclusively make wine from grapes that we're growing ourselves. Pinot Noir, it's the right spot in Kelowna to grow on. Along Lakeshore Road, it seems to be just the right spot to it. And for us, I mean, we grow like from Pinot Meunier to Pinot Noir and Gamay Noir, for example. So we're getting a little bit the hand in it. Pinot Noir can obviously be very, very tough to grow, and sometimes everything can go wrong, will go wrong. On the other hand, if it goes right, it is absolute a wine that always gives you something different. It's quite moody in a sense of showing very well 1 month, and the next time you're like, oh my God, what went wrong? And obviously, as older they go, they soften, they become a little bit more mature, and also relieve you with lots of great flavors.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I've got a theory, and you guys can tell me if I'm correct or not. But when I was first in the Okanagan here, Pinot Noirs were often like, let's face it, they weren't as great, nothing like we see today, and they were very hard and tight and tannic and a little bit mean, and eventually they did open up. But I feel like personally, it's maybe the variety that's improved the most in how we understand it and grow it and make it in the valley. And now they're approachable young, but still age. And my theory is these really long days, very hot sunshine, very dry conditions, make a more tannic Pinot than you see in a lot of other parts of the world. And so we've, it looks like wineries I haven't never made Pinot myself, so I don't know, but it looks like wineries have figured out how to grow and make that. And Darryl, I don't know if you guys make some great Pinot too at some of your properties. What's changed in the winemaking and production and grape growing of Pinot to for this jump up in quality?
Yeah, you're spot on, Rhys. After making Pinot in Ontario and New Zealand, you work so much to pull out of Pinot. You know, you do it gently, of course, but you're always looking to get more color and a bit more extraction, because Pinot in New Zealand specifically, you had to work really hard to actually get something out of the wine. And my first harvest in 2010 here, it wasn't. You know, it's like, my goodness, I've hardly done anything. I got more color and more tannin than what I've seen.
Yeah.
So you have to quickly adjust, and you're absolutely spot on. It's a shorter growing season, but much longer days and really, really intense sunlight, and that builds tannin. So I think it's just learning to make Pinot with a soft hand, and just treating it as completely. You got to throw all the other winemaking techniques out the window and just focus on the Pinot Noir. You know, it caught me for a couple of years, and I came here with some experience with Pinot, and it still took me a few years to get the hang of it.
Yeah, I think that's you know, such a cool kind of evolution, and what we're, you know, seeing. We are still a pretty young industry, but now we're talking about, you know, 20-plus-year-old vines in their Perpetua. Andy, you've got 40-year-old vines, and so, you know, we've moved over that hurdle where we're not just playing with young fruit. We're not copying other regions of the world anymore and trying to emulate what they do in Burgundy or California or New Zealand or whatever. We're figuring out what do we naturally get best from our vineyards, our fruit, and then how to make that. And the wines are really, they're telling the story themselves, and they're vibrant and fresh and great acidity and great longevity and ageability. And, you know, I think these are the stories we now have to start kind of telling as an industry. So yeah, Andy, that one's looking good too. It should age pretty well, I think. And
it does. One of the things to the ageability and to the wine region itself here in the Okanagan, being in it since now quite a while, we took over the place in '85. We all went to the evolution of trying to find our way, and now it is slowly showing that we're getting a little bit the hang of it. I mean, it's, you know, the experience that comes from different countries, because you only have once a year, you have a chance to do it right. And with younger plantings at that time, with being, you know, focusing on California and then back to Oregon again and back to Burgundy. So you're trying to find who you are. You have to grow into your own skin, in a sense. Yeah. Right now we start to have a number of vintages behind us that we are slowly seeing a little bit a better path. And I think that when I'm about 95 years old, I think I'm slowly getting to understand Pinot Noir, hopefully. So.
Oh, I look forward to that, Andy. Yeah, that's awesome. No, drinking beautifully. And so we'll go on to the fourth wine we have, which is back to Mission Hill. So we have the Quatrain here, which is really cool. So it's 2014 vintage Quatrain. Again, one of the kind of top wines in the portfolio of Mission Hill. And I think what we were just talking about with Pinot also leads into this. So Bordeaux varietal blends, Cabernets, Merlots are known for aging. But anything you read in a textbook, you know, Merlot is always the love handles, the soft, you know, the rounding out the edges on Cabernet, right? But here, like, I don't find Merlot does that in the Okanagan because it gets that hot sun, the tannins and everything. It's actually a fairly structured wine here too. What I love about this wine, and there's a few producers doing it too, is the Syrah is kind of more the Merlot in the Okanagan than Merlot is, if that makes sense. And Darryl, I don't know if you agree, but like I always love this wine for that. I think the Syrah gives it such flesh and texture. And can you tell us a little bit about that blending? And you know, just quickly before you do that, though, I'm not sure why so many producers feel like they have to stick with the rules of Bordeaux when we're in the Okanagan or the Similkameen. Like if we're not doing that job, Syrah in the mix, something does it. Like why follow rules from another country in another region? So this, I think it's, let us know a little bit about, this is 14, right? So.
Yeah, 2014. So a great year, not just for whites as we saw in the Riesling, but a really good year for reds as well. And in my short time in the valley, in my 10 harvests or so in the valley, it's the best year I've seen across the board. You know, because you could do great Pinot, beautiful for the north and also for the south. But you're right, that's exactly what we use Syrah in Quatrain. Is it's to think of Syrah as what brings the softness and the roundness, and it's always the most approachable of it. We make 3 reds in this tier, in our legacy tier, and this is always the most approachable, even at 5-6 years old, because we make these wines to last 15, 20 plus years. So, and you can see that even trying this. So Syrah really pokes its head out now. Interestingly, yeah, exactly. And we do make the Syrah in this one, Rhys. We make the Syrah in a bigger, richer style as well. If we're making this as a straight Syrah, we know when we're picking the grapes in the vineyard, all comes from our vineyard right on the US border. And we know when we're picking those grapes that it's going into Quatrain, and we actually make it in a bigger, richer style. We try and extract more out of it, and it still ends up the softer component in the blend.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's 6 years old now. This wine, it's got just starting to get some of those, beautiful kind of that burlap, tobacco, kind of earthy notes, but still really punchy, vibrant black fruit, and drinking really, really well. And I think that's one of the, again, I always come back to, there's always discussions about value and BC wine. And I always go back to the fact that we don't actually have a cheap bulk wine region in BC. Like a lot of countries, big hot area that gets 20 tons an acre, and we don't actually have that at all. We're like a Burgundy or any premium region. We don't have a hot bulk area. We don't make bulk cheap wine. We make really good value, kind of high quality wine, right? And then when you throw the ageability thing into it, and if you look around the world for wines that can age and develop and improve for 10 plus years, we look very inexpensive. That some of these wines really offer such great value to fill your cellar with. I feel like it's just something we haven't really, got in the culture yet. People buy BC wine and drink it, and we need to, change that culture. So you buy some, yes, drink it, but put a few away, and you start to see that. And everyone you talk to who's done that has some really great experiences. With how well these wines turn out. So I think we've already hit the over the 30 minutes. I got so many more questions here and stuff. Ashley, did you want to point out some questions that we need to tackle? I can have a look here. Or?
Absolutely. Just want to make sure my audio is working. So I have labeled the questions here. One of the questions from Scott: is there one clone of Pinot that Okanagan wineries have embraced over others?
I think there's a number of clones that are working very well, and the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant is the terroir in the Okanagan is so diverse in a sense. The exposure to the sun, all that. I don't think it would be healthy to have one approach to that's the right one, in my opinion, at least. So the Dijon clone, the more the well-known one are definitely for us working very well up here in the north.
Perfect. Cool. I see you've marked them there, Ashley, so I can, handle those if you like. So, it's a question from DJ. Hi, DJ. I hope it was a good soccer game. Don't tell me the score. That's a side comment. So can Darryl talk a little bit about high alcohol and ageability? With all that sun we get and things, right? It's, we do get high sugars, high alcohol.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one I would honestly say I don't have a full grasp on, because you intuitively think that the higher the alcohol, it's going to affect the ageability. I haven't seen it as much, where I know virtually every producer in the Okanagan, all that I'm talking to, everyone's trying to lower their alcohol. Everyone's trying to push their alcohol down. And there's good techniques that are coming out to do that. And we, as winemakers, we spend a lot of time talking about it. But intuitively, I think the alcohol gets too high, it will affect your ageability. We know that from classic old world wines around the world, like 50-year-old Bordeaux wines at 12.5%. But I think it might be equally as related to acidity and freshness in the wine. So higher the alcohol, it jumped out for me, and we don't talk enough about acidity and freshness, but that Pinot from St. Hubertus is beautiful, and the acidity in that wine is stunning, and that's what's going to help it age. Probably if you're pushing your alcohol at 14.5%, 15.5%, that's when you're going to lose your freshness. So it might be correlated that way. I don't think it's purely the alcohol itself, because we all know alcohol on its own is a preservative. So I think it's a freshness thing.
Yeah, and I think you're right with the talk about, to me, the acidity that we naturally get here from those cool nights. And Darryl, you've worked around the world, and Andy, you've seen it. Like, people would, give their firstborn child to get the acidity that we get here naturally without having to add it from a bag. I think that's no one's talking about that stuff in other places, but we get it naturally, and I find it so well integrated in wines when you do that, right? And so I think that's a really key thing. So kind of linked to it. The next question we have is from Barrett Jackson. What effect does malolactic fermentation have on ageability for Chardonnay? Does the change in acid composition have a big effect, or is it the TA level more important? I don't know who wants to answer that. Darryl, was your Chardonnay here? Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So my personal opinion is I'm not a huge fan of malolactic fermentation in Chardonnay, but once again, it's personal, because I've tried many great Chardonnays, obviously from around the world and also from the valley that go there. The reason I don't like it is I think you lose the sense of place, and that's why I don't jump towards it. And right, it does affect the acidity as well, and I like as much acid as possible in Chardonnay specifically for aging reasons, and freshness. So personally, I don't love it, but it's not to say it's not suited to certain wine styles. But to me, when I say you lose a sense of place, is that buttery character and everything that comes with malolactic, and as much as you can do to
overpowers,
it doesn't come from the vineyards, and so to me, I think the acidity comes from the vineyard, so I prefer to preserve the acidity. So, but that's a personal opinion. I think it probably does affect the ageability a little bit, but there's a lot of people who would have great arguments against me on that one.
Well, we'll save that for the next one here. And then there's a comment from DJ, 2010, a really nice, cool vintage. We talked a bit about 2010, and I think this is kind of an important one just to touch on, is some of the really cooler vintages like 2010, people are a little bit down on them, but they're often the best aging and elegant and fresh. So I know, Andy, you will have seen quite a few cool and hard and warm, and we've seen so many different vintages. What's your take on the difference with a cooler vintage and how it does?
Personally, I don't mind cooler vintages. The only challenge to it is, which we're very, very lucky because we only have estate fruit, is being out there more. There's maybe a green harvest on some blocks where you feel that they just are struggling to hit certain benchmarks. But on the other hand, if it is a long, drawn-out, cool vintage, the maturity of the grapes is just much, much better. It's instead of having a flamethrower, ripening everything, having everything out of whack. In theory, this is what would be perfect. In reality, it makes very two-dimensional wines. Just having these hot, high heat unit years. So the challenge on the colder ones is, of course, if it's game over too early because you have a cold snap coming in and frost, you're having an issue. Being here on the lake, and I mean the same as Darryl's Cedar Creek property, being so close to the lake, we have that little radiator built in that will basically protect us from an early frost quite well. So not too worried about the cold years unless there's a kill frost that basically just calls game over. So
I think that's very well said. And for me, it's almost like the opposite from when we get a really hot vintage, like 2015 comes to mind. Everyone gets all excited about it because it was so hot. And for me, they're the least interesting wines, to be honest. It's just everything happened too fast and it's big and rich, but there's no depth of flavor and elegance and all the stuff that we talk about as being so great with our climate. So it's kind of interesting. Hey, people look at the hot is better, and I think that's definitely not the case. We've got a couple of 2014s here, which we thought it was a hot vintage at the time because it was warmer than the 4 before it, but it's actually was not nearly as warm as 15 or 16. And so it's, that's that sort of mid-range is often just the greatest for, longevity.
Yeah.
Okay, let's couple more questions. Bernard Kenner. Oh, it's about my little farm Riesling, very high in acid. Is still making that style. Yes, bone dry, high acid. Again, like Andy was saying, needs time, right? And yeah, so we're happily just selling the 16 and 17 Rieslings, which are just coming into their own, like Andy was saying there. So yeah, Joe Ingram, watching from New York City. I've greatly enjoyed BC wines when I've been in the province, frustrated and not being able to find them in the US. Any prospects for that situation to change in the future? Yeah, I think there are a few wineries that are working to sell a little bit in the US, but it's pretty difficult. But there is a little bit. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that or.
Yeah, there are some wines going in through a few initiatives. The Okanagan Wine Initiative is putting some in and doing things there. There was meant to be a tasting in New York that we all know was cancelled. That would have been a good way to get more wines into the market and good way to meet distributors. And there is also Vino Shipper, the direct to consumer. There are Canadian wines available through Vino Shipper. So I think Vino Shipper can ship to New York State, but they can ship to about 37 states. So that would be the other one to check out. I think there's about 10 Canadian wineries available on Vino Shipper as well, which is no distributor, just a direct to consumer based out of California.
Cool, thanks, Darryl. Yeah, so there you go, Joe. See if you can find any of those and watch out for tastings if things open up too. Tim Pawsey, hi Tim. Any comments on the impact of climate change on ageability, especially RE 2014? Wow, so many climate changes. Like I've been making wine since 2011, and I don't think I've seen anything like the same vintage twice. But I don't know who wants to comment on that one. That's yeah, massive.
It's like one of these things as an idea. When we took over the place in '85, we got from research, we got a climate map, and basically Kelowna up here is not suitable for growing grapes. And I mean, this short period of time, we are now probably at, I would say, the closest to perfect Pinot Noir region. And so that short period of time, from oh, don't touch vinifera to this is that place to be, it is actually worrisome. It is something that is we better get a handle on it, because at one point our honeymoon in this region could come to an end too. Otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just to add to that is, you know, even in the 10 years I've been here, you know, as we look in the south, Oliver and Osoyoos, you know, we're not looking for the south-facing warm slopes anymore. Even for big reds, we're looking for the northern slopes, and so you know, it's changing the way you look at the region. In some respects, that can be exciting because it opens up more areas that you wouldn't normally have jumped into before. But it's also pushing all of us further north. Like, look at the growth of lake country in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's vineyards popping up in Vernon, and, you know, and it's allowing us to push north. And it's not a good thing. I'm not saying that, but the wine industry around the world, and especially in BC, is incredibly adaptable. So, you know, just to try and look for one positive, the positive is that people are pushing into new regions and adapting. But none of us are happy about it. And I echo what Andy's saying is it's incredibly worrisome how fast it's changing.
Yeah. And just that variation from year to year. And I mean, we have in some of our new regions, new GIs we have in BC, we're at over 51 degrees latitude. Like in most wine textbooks, that doesn't exist. You know, it's like another thing. And, you know, ripening, you know, in Lillooet, ripening, you know, Cabernet and Merlot and things quite handily at over 51 degrees latitude. So, okay, next question. DJ saying, need to sell in 2 packs, 1 to keep and 1 to age. That's good, DJ. I'd go actually 12 packs and drink over a number of years. So I'll one up on that. Jean Taylor, I'll let you know, Darryl. She's gonna open a 2008 Quatrain tonight.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So Jean Taylor, well, that'll be interesting to see how. I'm sure it'll be delicious. Yeah. A good year. Holly Heffernan, are any of these wines available in Alberta, in Calgary? Nodding, yeah.
Both of ours are available in Calgary. Yeah. At multiple stores. Yeah, probably the same for you, Andy.
Yes, yeah, it is. They are, and otherwise, it's a great excuse to come to the Okanagan. So.
Yeah, direct shipping too. Most places do it. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say we all do it, but yeah. Yeah. Okay. I wonder if there's any new questions there. I think we're a few comments on low pH from Sid of Andy's Wines. I think that's an interesting geeky thing, but the pH of the low pH we get here makes the wine so stable, hey, and is part of their great ability to age. Does anyone want to just quickly, comment on what pH and acid and what that means? And Andy, what's your Riesling coming at?
For us, I mean, we try to balance the wine's pH and acid and sugar, but the most important thing for us is if the flavors are there. It's one of these. Yes, the FOSS will spit out exactly what all the numbers are, but if we're gonna start chasing numbers, we're running the risk of building a wine and not letting actually the grapes do their job. For commercial wines, you know what, there is something to be said for doing that. But for the reserve wines, this is one of these, that's the art of wine. And sometimes a certain wine will not be produced because it has no value for doing it. If we're gonna get away from having the vineyard actually producing the raw material and we start to work on it, and then there's the simple thing, even if we shoot for certain numbers, harvest time is panic at best of time, and certain fields just cannot be managed when the numbers are right. So it is still farming.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and embrace it. So we're at kind of time up here, but I'm just going to throw one last question in and get a quick answer from both of you. So, like, how do we become better known for the ageability of our wines in BC? What should we do for that? And how can, Yeah,
I'll have a crack at that first. I think there's certainly a responsibility on wineries to hold more wine back, and we're trying to do that more and more because the wines are stunning, and to be able to do vertical tastings. It's one thing to try a wine from 2005 that looks great. It's way more exciting to try 5 or 6 or 7 vintages. The consistency, that's the only way you build confidence. I think restaurants do their part fairly well. There's really good restaurants that build vertical lists and older lists and things like that. So, but I think a lot of it is up to the wineries to show people, because it's our responsibility to give consumers confidence in being able to, but you said it, buy a 12-pack and enjoy 1 or 2 bottles a year until they think it's right. And I think you said then enjoy the rest of them every night until they're gone when the time comes. But that's the only way. Is the proof is in the tasting, in my mind.
Yeah. So awesome. Yeah. Anything to add, Andy?
It is also has to do a little bit with, I think in the meanwhile, people start to embrace the wine culture way more. When we started, it was you bought a bottle of wine, you went home, had it for dinner, and that was the extent of your collection, that paper bag at that time that you took home from the liquor store. Now people have quite a bit of interest in curating their own wine cellar. And they started to mature these cellars. So if you go into it, you will find some great vintages. And I would imagine people start to talk also more about what they had, what they discovered. It is a fast changing world now, because there's so much great wines being stored in private wine cellars, and people take pride in having some jewels of our industries in their wine cellars, and they're gladly sharing notes and all that on social media. So I think we'll see it. Give it another 5 years, and we will have a way better understanding.
It's starting. So yeah, well, that's great. So I'll say thanks, everyone. Thanks for BC Wine Institute, Wines of British Columbia, for putting on this session. Hope everyone who's tuned in has kind of learned something. Thanks, Andy and Darryl. You guys were great. And yeah, I'll just sum it up. someone quickly asked a question about, cellar temperature of 15 degrees Celsius. That's perfect if you've got that. Keep it. So buy some BC wine to cellar, store it properly, enjoy it. And I'd say, wineries, be confident in our ability for wines to age and start talking about that. Don't be shy. We have all the conditions climate-wise to make great age-worthy wines that can stand up with the best in the world, and they're really, really good value for ageability. So I'm going to leave it with that. Thanks, everyone. Everyone hope is doing well, and we'll see you at the next event.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
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 Yeah.